My name's Han Nguyen. Again, happy to see you all. Welcome to our exciting webinar today, bringing English to life, practical tips for real-world communication. Before we start, can you just let me know if you all can hear me well enough? Give me some reaction, some thumbs up, or just type yes in the chat box, please. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, I hope you're having a great evening. It's evening time here in Ho Chi Minh City, and I believe it also late evening in some other parts of your places as well, especially the Filipino friends. So today, as you can see, we'll be diving into the topic of bringing English to practical life. Before we can dive into this session, let me just quickly introduce our distinguished presenter, Ms. Sushil Penuti, an experienced educator passionate about fostering inclusive and engaging learning environments. Ms. Penuti brings a wealth of expertise in integrating technology into classroom to enhance student outcomes. Today, she will share actionable strategies for improving students' communication skills through real-world applications, helping make English both relevant and accessible for secondary learners. Okay. Let me also tell you about EduVerse, the platform powering this webinar. Driven by ProEd Education Solutions, EduVerse is a global network connecting educators to share and learn about innovative teaching practices. From monthly newsletters featuring the latest educational trends to free live webinars every 2 months, just like the one we're having here, EduVerse is dedicated to supporting your professional growth. In this topic, if you're looking for effective ways to help students confidently use their English beyond the classroom, you're in the right place. Today, Ms. Penuti will guide us through practical strategies to link English learning with real-life context that resonate with students. After the webinar, please take a short moment to complete our survey to help us improve future events. You'll also receive an email with instructions to download your certificate within 24 hours. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Feel free to ask questions and make the most of the session. Thank you. And over to you, Ms. Sushil Penuti.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you very, very much, Han. Welcome, everyone, to our webinar, which is going to be focusing on real-life communication. Before we start, I'd like to thank all of you. And I can just imagine how enthusiastic and how passionate you are as educators. I do know it is after 8 o'clock in some parts of Asia. Therefore, on a Friday evening as well, therefore, your presence is truly appreciated. No, I hope that you learn as much as possible from my presentation to all of you. I have created a presentation based on all of my experiences and a lot of research that I've done as well throughout all of my years of teaching English in various countries, to be honest. I live here in Italy, in Milan, but I've actually worked across 2 different continents. Also in Asia, my most favorite country is Vietnam, to be honest. I've been there a couple of times, but I've also lived in Thailand, in Bangkok. So, all of the experiences that I've had, I've put together in a presentation, and I hope to share as much as possible with all of you. I'm just going to share my screen now. So just give me a second to get my presentation out for you. So here we go. Brilliant. Can I assume that all of you can see this presentation? Yes?
Yes, Sushil. Can you just go to the presentation mode because we still see this under your design mode?
Yeah. All right. Is that all right?
Yes, it works perfectly now.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're talking about something really, really important today. Now, let's ask you a question. Did you know, or rather, it's a statement to be honest, did you know that learners remember up to 70% of what they practice in real life situations? Such a powerful insight, this particular statement, because it is a reminder of how vital it is to make English learning practical and meaningful. Now, learners tend to remember up to 70% of what they practice in real life situations because these experiences actually feel meaningful and highly, highly relevant. When we actively use what we've learned, it sticks with us far better than when we simply read or listen to information, for example. And this idea, by the way, has been supported by decades and decades of research done by so many different organizations. It's probably something we have all experienced in our own lives. Let's take a look at why real life practice works. Now, I'd like to start off with hands-on learning, about how you learn to ride a bike, for example. Reading instructions or watching a video could only take you so far. You had to get on the bike and wobble a bit before it actually clicked. And the same principle really applies to learning in other areas. When we practice actively, we're engaging both our mind and our body and reinforcing what we learn, learning in context. When knowledge is tied to a specific situation, it becomes easier to recall later. For instance, you might remember how to ask for directions in Italian if you had to do it while traveling in Milan, Italy, as I hope all of you will do someday if you haven't already. Moments of real world necessity makes the learning unforgettable. Share some everyday examples with you. Learning a new language, you can spend hours and hours in a classroom studying vocabulary. If using it in real life conversations, for example, like ordering a coffee or chatting with a local, cements all of this in your brain. This is what we call immersion programs. Now, immersion programs work so well because they force learners to use their skills in authentic ways. And this is true for me. I am a language learner. I've been a language learner all my life, and I'm living in a country here, and my first language is English, it's not Italian. So all of this experience that I'm sharing with you is what I've gone through for the last few years, ever since we've moved back to Italy. I'm going to give you another example, and let's see if you can relate to that. On the job training. Now, my brother's a doctor, and I remember when he was at university, he used to read a lot of books that were that big. Doctors in training, they don't just read about surgeries, they practice on simulated patients or they assist in real operations like putting up a body and finding out how we look like inside. This hands-on experience prepares them for real emergencies far better than reading a book that is flat thick. Now, this particular slide that you see in front of you, I've put that up there based on organizations and what they're looking for in their candidates. Many companies, they use role-playing exercises to train their employees. So communication skills here are essential. If you're a salesperson working in an organization, for example, now what you might learn to do at the office, you might learn how to practice pitching to a mock client, for example, in sales. And the act of rehearsing in a realistic setting, that makes learning practical and memorable as well. Teacher, I am a huge proponent of task-based learning and project-based learning because my students, when they work on real-life projects, for example, like building a solar system or even organizing a charity event, a public awareness, a social awareness event, they remember the lessons because they see the effort that they've made, how their efforts apply to the world around them. So this becomes engaging more than just reading about sustainability or even teamwork, for example. So my opinion is this: real life practice bridges the gap between theory and application, and it makes learning relevant, engaging as well. So when all of you teachers, when you incorporate authentic scenarios into educational or training programs, I can assure you that your learners, that your students will be able to retain and apply knowledge far more effectively. So what are we doing today? Today I am here and I'm really, really, really happy to be here to talk about the value of real world communication. What I want to do with you is I want to explore practical ways to make English language learning come alive for your students. Let's look at exactly why real-world communication is so powerful and how it helps students build confidence and competence in using English. Let's also talk about creating engaging and interactive classroom activities. I'm going to share a lot of examples with you. That's my job today. That can encourage your students to actively participate in your lessons. Let's also look at task-based learning because this is an effective way of learning. And I'm going to share with you some practical examples that can fit seamlessly into your curriculum. We are also going to tackle common challenges. Now, we experience challenges every single day in our classrooms and in our schools. So we'll talk about them. We'll tackle common challenges like, for example, mixed proficiency levels in your class or student reluctance, maybe. And I'd like to share some simple strategies to overcome these problems, these challenges. Finally, to wrap up, I'm going to show you some examples from pages, books, that can demonstrate how using resources, certain resources can actually help you create impactful and relevant lessons that truly resonate with your students in your classrooms. Dale, let me carry on now with talking about what real world communication is. So important. Language learning. Everyone is learning a language. How many of you speak more than 2 languages? I speak 4 languages, and my 5th language is Italian, as a matter of fact. I was born in Asia, like a lot of you. I see some of you are from Turkey as well as from Algeria. Welcome. And Greece as well, I've seen. Well, I was born in Asia. I was born in a country called Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur, and how I've ended up here in a country that speaks very little English. That's a long story to be shared with you on a different day. But I'm a language learner myself, and I know and I appreciate how English is a global language. So when we talk about real world communication, this is crucial in language learning because what we want to do as educators, we want to connect the classroom with the outside world. We want to make English for your students feel relevant as well as practical. English is the global language, as I mentioned. In business, in education, when you travel, and learning to communicate effectively in these areas is essential not only for personal, but also for professional success. So you could be navigating a job interview, for example, or you could be presenting ideas in a meeting or traveling to a new country. Being able to use English confidently in real world situation makes all of the difference. I'm sure you agree with me. For example, I talked about practicing a job interview scenario in English. Now, if you do that with your students, it not only helps your kids memorize vocabulary, but it also allows them to actively use the language in a way that mirrors real life pressures and challenges. So this is what we call experiential learning. I'm sure you've heard of this. This solidifies vocabulary, which is what we want at the end of the day, because that's part of traditional teaching. Vocabulary and grammar is important. But when you use this type of learning, it solidifies all of the traditional ways of learning far more effectively than just memorization. That's the way I learned when I was a young kid growing up in Kuala Lumpur. We learned to memorize everything, whether it's in science, whether it's in geography, or even mathematical processes. But for English language, we can do this a little bit differently. Students will see immediate application of your skills. Now, the other thing here is confidence. So many language learners have a lack of confidence. And these kind of real world tasks, they will build practical confidence. I can assure you, I've seen it in all of my classes. So students who learn grammar rules and vocabulary, a lot of them struggle when they need to use them outside of the classroom. Organizing, scenarios or organizing activities like negotiating a purchase in English, organizing group discussions about current events. So many things happening out in the world today that we can talk about. And then encourage them to apply whatever they've talked about in a meaningful way. These experiences they are practice experiences, really, and they help bridge the gap, really, between theoretical knowledge and real world fluency. So when you incorporate real world communication, this is also going to promote lifelong learning. Now, I have spent the last couple of years learning Italian. My husband and my son, they're Italian. Italian is a difficult language. Let me just confirm that. Uh, when I am outside of the classroom and I am at the post office, for example, or if I go to the supermarket, I'm actually applying all of the language that I've learned from a theoretical basis into a real life scenario. And in less than a year, my Italian language skills have actually grown and grown and grown. So as an adult, as a 50-something adult, I can assure you that these kinds of strategies that I'm sharing with you will help your students learn English very, very quickly. Now, another key benefit, and I host a lot of webinars. And my webinars are based on educational trends that are very important and crucial today. One of those is integrating soft skills in your classroom. Another key benefit is that real world communication that we're talking about, these tasks will help develop soft skills. And soft skills are many. One of them is collaboration. The other one that nobody talks about that much is empathy. Empathy means, the feeling that you have, as well as cultural awareness. So you could create activities such as group projects or even discussions on global issues. And this actually will teach your students how to listen, how to negotiate, and understand different perspectives. So skills that are highly, highly valued in today's world. I see that all of you are from so many different parts of the world. You could create activities like role-playing cultural scenarios, for example, because what this does is they don't only practice English, but they are building empathy for different cultures. There's so many cultures around the world, and so prepares them for the globalized workforce. I mean, how do you know? I mean, you might be living in Asia, but tomorrow you could be coming to Greece to work or to even to Turkey to work. So, all of these things will really, really will help you, your students even. Ultimately, real world communication prepares students for exams and life beyond the classroom. Now, we know that exams, they assess language proficiency, but real world tasks, they do develop functional fluency that helps students excel in academic settings and in their future careers, of course. So these scenarios, they provide students with the tools they are going to need to succeed in both structured exams and unpredictable real world solutions. And I think that's the best way you can teach your students. Is a bar chart. Preparing this presentation, I did a lot of research on different websites, educational websites, as well as LinkedIn. And here is a bar chart comparing language retention rates across different ELT classroom teaching methods. This data that you see in front of you suggests that methods emphasizing real world communication, they yield the highest retention rates, followed by task-based learning, as you can see, and interactive role-playing, while traditional methods show the lowest retention. So traditional methods like drills, repetition, memorization, they often have lower retention rates simply because they lack engagement. They lack contextual application. Whilst interactive and task-based methods, role-playing, simulations, this improves retention as they are engaging your learners, your students, to actively provide context. Finally, real-world communication is consistent because it shows the highest retention rate due to its immediate relevance and the meaningful application of language skills. If you want your kids to pick up the language faster, smoother, and make it relevant and engaging, this is exactly what you should be doing for them, focusing on real world communication. Now, just very quickly, I'm going to share some strategies. So the objective here is, how can I help you help your students? And I've put together some strategies that can engage your learners. Bringing real life context into a classroom will make your learning practical. That is a great objective to have. For example, I'm just going to give you some examples here. Instead of just learning about time or transportation in theory, students can use an actual train schedule to plan a trip. And this helps them not only understand the language, but also feel confident using it in real life situations. You can do as well, similarly, is you can give your students restaurant menus to role play, ordering food in a cafe. This makes learning interactive and relatable as well, because these are things that we do in everyday life. Taking it further, project-based learning. I love project-based learning. My latest teaching assignment was here in Milan, and I was teaching middle school. I've got kids from primary school all the way up to university level, and middle school kids love class-based learning. They love project-based learning, and I've taught them over 3 years, and I've actually seen them progress to unbelievable amounts, which gives me a lot of satisfaction as well. So I can assure you that all of these things that you are implementing in your integrating in your classroom will help them pick up the language faster and build up that confidence as well to speak. So project-based learning, for example, this this allows your students to work together on creative tasks. It could be designing a travel brochure, for example. I'm also a clinic specialist, and here in Italy, I taught classrooms. I taught English in different subjects like geography and science. So most recently in my geography class, we did Northern America. And what they had to do for me was they had to create a travel brochure and a travel video. And they enjoyed it so much. And then they had to present in class, of course. So you could ask them to do that, or you could ask them to organize a charity event, a pretend charity event. And in this way, you can imagine that a group creating a campaign, for example, to raise awareness about an environmental issue. Oh, sorry, I've got someone coming about an environmental issue. What they're going to do is they're going to learn important vocabulary. They're going to practice teamwork. Feel like they're making a difference. When they present their projects to the class, which is important, by the way, because we need for them to also have speaking skills, they also get a chance to build public speaking skills and celebrate their hard work. So these hands-on activities turn the classroom into a space where language feels alive and meaningful, and it prepares students to use the language confidently in the real world. I'm sure you'll agree with me on that one. All right, let's take a look at interactive learning activities. This is another strategy that you can use in your classroom. I'm sharing with you quite a few today. There are loads out there, and if you like, I can always come back and share more experiences with you. So interactive learning activities, they make lessons more engaging and they help students get involved in the learning process. If you have heard of think, pair, share activities, if you have, just put a like or put a love, put a yes thumbs up sign if you've heard of this. So what is this exactly? Now, students first take a moment to think about a topic. And that topic could be, would you do if you had unlimited free time? Oh, I could do so many things with that. Then you talk with a partner. They have to work together, they have to collaborate together. Talk with a partner about their ideas before sharing their thoughts with the whole class. Way to get everyone thinking and talking. Debates and discussions. Oh, that's another interesting way. It's a great way to get students to interact. You could organize a debate around a question like, and I did this, by the way, so I'm sharing with you a real life experience. So the debate that I organized was about, could students have homework every day? So two groups, two teams had to debate, and the one that had the best ideas would, of course, win. So this allows students to practice persuasive language and to learn how to argue their point of view. Conversation stations as well are a fun twist on classroom discussions. So students can rotate between different topic stations. These are called conversation stations. This is actually a great idea. And one station could be dream travel destinations, which is the country that I want to visit the most in the world, or even favorite books. So each small group gets to share their thoughts on different themes, and this makes the lesson feel fresh and exciting. These activities not only make learning more fun, but they also help your students feel more confident using language in real conversations. Making learning, make learning multisensory. Now, making learning multisensory does help your students. They engage your students by appealing to different senses. By the way, this really works for the little children. I don't know how many of you have got younger kids, primary school kids that you are teaching, and this really, really works. I've done this. I've tried this many, many times, even with kindergarten children. For example, using visuals and props, this can bring lessons to life. You might show a short video clip related to the lesson, and you might ask students to predict what will happen next. And this sparks curiosity, and this also encourages them to think critically. The visual and auditory input helps them retain information more effectively. Another thing is movement-based activities. You have heard of total physical response, TPR. This takes learning beyond just seeing and hearing. For example, with my kids, with my little kids, I've got great memories of teaching them. When teaching action verbs, you could have students act out words like jump or run or dance, to physically engage with the vocabulary. This not only makes the lesson more fun, but it also helps students internalize the words by connecting them to physical actions. So what you're doing is you're tapping into multiple senses. The students are more likely to remember and apply what they've learned. I think these are great strategies. Another strategy is, as I mentioned, and I love this, and recently, as I said, I hosted a webinar specifically on task-based learning because I think it's a great way to integrate, into all of your ELT classrooms. Why? Because it makes language feel useful and real. Instead of just memorizing vocabulary, students, they get to use the language to achieve real life goals. For example, to plan a party together. What they would have to do is they would have to make invitations. They would have to discuss the menu. They would have to create a budget. All of this in English. These tasks help them to practice the language they might actually use in a similar situation, like making suggestions or even talking about preferences. So to make sure students feel confident, it's important to scaffold activities. Now, we use this trick a lot in teaching classes. So what does it mean, scaffolding? Basically, you need to start by guiding them through simple tasks, like showing how to write an invitation, maybe, or how to talk about a menu in small groups. Then, as they get more comfortable, let them take on bigger tasks on their own. This approach helps students build their skills gradually. Piano, piano, as they say here in Italy, slowly. And then they've learned to use language in ways that are both practical and fun. Another thing I love doing, language games. Games in general. Games are fun. They're engaging. Kids love them. Kids, even high school kids love games, let me tell you. Because this is a great way to get your students talking and practicing their language skills. Have you heard of 20 questions? 20 questions, for example. So one student has to think of an object. Let's just say a banana. The others will take turns asking yes, no questions, such as, is it yellow? Is it big? Is it big or small? Can you put it in your handbag? Can you bring it around? And this actually helps students practice forming questions and thinking in English. A great game is Taboo. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's a great game. Students have to describe a word without using certain taboo words listed on the card. For instance, if the word is dog, they might have to describe it. And they cannot use words like bark or even pet. Maybe they can use pet, but definitely not bark, because that gives away the answer very, very quickly. And this kind of game, if you use it in your classroom, it's going to push your students to think creatively and use a wider range of vocabulary. So both games not only get students practicing language, but they also encourage collaboration, problem solving, lots and lots of laughter, making learning feel like a game rather than a lesson. Brilliant. And another one, oh yes, this is the one that I talked about earlier, collaborative projects. Fantastic way, fantastic way to get your students working together while practicing real life language skills. Now, so many things you can do. I've put some examples here. And one of the ones that I love, which I use all the time with my kids, are designing campaigns, creating or raising awareness about an environmental issue. Not too long ago here in Italy, there was a lot of rain. As a I'm sure you've heard what happened in Spain as well. As a consequences, they were flooding. And not too far from where I live, the water's actually going into the houses, creating a lot of damage to people who are going to work, etc. Now, the immediate response was, this is an environmental issue. What can we do to prevent this from happening again? And you can get your kids discussing about, things even like reducing plastic waste, for example. They will create or they will increase their vocabulary that's related to sustainability. If we're talking about reducing plastic waste, recycle, reduce, conserve, pollution, all of this. They could create posters, they could write slogans, and even plan how to spread the message, which gives them a great chance to practice again persuasive language in a meaningful way. Um, See, I just thought of something else. Another great step would be having them create a budget for their campaign, which would help them learn functional language when it comes to money, like cost, expenses, budgeting. Now, these are difficult words, but these words are useful and necessary in everyday life, let's just say. And to make sure they succeed, by guiding them through smaller tasks, such as make a budget or how to structure their campaign ideas. Students get more comfortable, gradually let them take the lead, let them plan and present the entire project. So this way, they are practicing their language skills, they are building confidence, there's a lot of teamwork and collaboration, and even public speaking skills as they present their ideas to the class. It's a great hands-on way of learning that makes the language feel real and purposeful. So we are halfway through, teachers, educators, and I'm just going to show you this quick slide here, which really shows the practical tips for real-world communication in a nutshell. I know, and you know, bringing English to life in the classroom is more and more important these days. We must plan our lessons and we think about how to make our lessons engaging, how to make our lessons interesting and feel relevant and exciting for our students. Now, this is one way that has been proven to work on so many levels, role-playing real-life scenarios. So simple to think about ideas on how you can do that, because these types of activities are relevant and they help students feel confident using English in everyday situations. The other thing that I talked about earlier, project-based learning. Another strategy that adds a real-world dimension to your classroom. And these kind of projects that you create for them, by the way, there are tons. There's so many ideas out there, and I'm happy to share more and more ideas with you if you like, because these projects, they give them a purpose for using the language. And all the communication skills, basically, whether it's writing, speaking, listening, or reading. And another way to make learning feel more connected to real life is by integrating all of these different skills in a single task. So you're combining listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and students can see how these skills work together in real communication, making the learning process so. Now, and this is another slide that I'm going to share with you, which I feel is really, really important. And we're talking about challenges. All of us will face some sort of challenge in our language classrooms, and there are so many of them. So Which of these challenges, I'd like to ask you this as well, which of these challenges do you relate to the most? For me, all of them. Every single one that I put here, I've experienced all of that. Limited classroom time. We have a curriculum, we have a syllabus that we must meet in that 10 months that our children are at school. So we've got tight schedules. We need to focus on completing the syllabus. Gives us little room for communicative abilities. Do you do? So prioritizing grammar drills, for examples, and reading comprehension, all of this can overshadow speaking and listening practice, which is such a pity. For example, and I'm sure you can relate to this, a teacher like you might spend weeks preparing students for exams. We're all paper pushers at the end, and there's no time for activities like role plays or group discussion. Well, this means you have to plan your time accordingly. I'm going to share an experience that I've not really shared with anyone. I've had resistance from parents in my Italian classrooms. I always create practical tasks for my kids. Hey, the objective is for them to progress in the English language. So I create all of these tasks whereby they must build their public speaking and their presentation skills, as well as the soft skills that they learn that I integrate in my classrooms. Come back to me and they say, Mrs. Penuti, Signora Penuti, what about the tests? What about the exams? When are you giving it to the children? So this is what I did. I treated those presentations that they created and that they presented in my classroom, I treated that as a test. And I would give them marks based on collaboration, based on creativity, based on communication, and based on how well they've worked together and the content that they've created, as well as their presentation skills. Done and dusted. That was the perfect way for me to combine all of this without making the parents upset. And with also bringing my kids up to mark in terms of progress in the English language. The other thing that you might have, and in Italy, schools are inclusive. And what this means is you will have diverse student proficiency levels. So mixed ability classrooms, basically. This can actually make it challenging to design activities that engage both advanced and struggling learners. Now, the advanced students, and I've experienced many of them here, they might dominate discussions. While the shy or the less proficient students, they feel anxious, they hesitate to participate. So what you could do here is scaffolding tasks. Use different materials, differentiated materials, and this can really address the issue. Another thing is student reluctance. The mentality in the country that I'm living now is drills and memorization. Students are happy to go back and to memorize pages 10 to pages 110. And they feel once they've done that, I feel better. If I'm asked a question, I have the answer to it. No, that's not the way I conduct my classes at all. So these students become very, very anxious then, and they are scared. The fear of making mistakes is very, very high. Above all, they don't want to be judged by their classmates, by their peers. And this problem often discourages students from speaking in English. Another thing that I experience here, cultural norms. This might also play a role. In some settings, students are less comfortable with public speaking or interactive learning. So, a student might know the answer, but will never put up their hand because they avoid speaking up. They fear pronunciation errors. So it's really up to you as a teacher to make them feel calm and to make them feel that there is always room for error and we learn through our mistakes. The other thing that a lot of teachers face and experience are resource limitations. And in some contexts, access to modern teaching aids, technology, or even authentic material is limited. I'd like to share some materials with you after this as well. So, this is a problem that a lot of teachers face. Now, some teachers might even rely on textbooks that are outdated, or they might not even have internet access for digital tools. And digital tools are very, very important these days. So, this is a problem that we need to find a solution for because otherwise it might be difficult to integrate real world communication tasks if there's no technology, really. Now, I'm not sure how it is in your part of the world, but here in my part of the world, class sizes are a maximum of 25 to 26 kids, which in my opinion is a lot. But my husband told me that when he was little, classes could be up to 38 to 40 kids here in Italy. We're talking about 30 years ago. So how do you manage active communication tasks in a classroom with 40 plus students? Now, this can be quite daunting. The noise levels, how do you monitor groups, for example? How do you provide individual feedback? It becomes challenging. So, like conducting a role play activity in a large class can lead to chaos if not well structured. So, this is another thing that you have to plan, perhaps doing different things on different days. And, that's going to alleviate a lot of problems. Again, exam preparation, paper pushing. There is an overemphasis on this. Now, you know, and I know that curriculums, they prioritize test results. They want to focus on grammar, vocabulary, and writing rather than speaking or listening. So teachers like you and me, we feel the pressure, to teach through the text rather than fostering holistic communication skills. But that's sad, really. So the best thing you can do is to be a little bit flexible and to incorporate all of these strategies that I just showed you to cover not only the grammar, vocab, and writing, but also ensure that the children have speaking or listening opportunities. The thing that I've put here is lack of teacher training. All of you are fantastic. You're here on a Friday evening. You could be out there having a drink with your friends, but you're here listening to me speak about real world communication. And this is teacher training. But lots and lots of teachers lack this. And, they don't know what is task based, they don't know what is communicative language teaching. This is a big gap. And this can make it harder for them to design effective, engaging real life activities. I have talked a lot now, and this is the moment I'm going to share with you some sample activity. So this page here will offer opportunities for promoting real world communication through this kind of interactive activities. This is a page from a book that I'm going to show you in a little while's time. But if you look carefully at what is on this slide, you will see that there are many, many things that you can do here. You could role play dialogue practice, and the activity could be students have them role play the interviews, and they can take turns asking and answering questions about their daily routines, because daily routines is what we experience every single day. And this could mimic the structure in the dialogue that you see there in the purple box and the blue box. So the real world link to this is this mirrors real life conversations, such as talking to classmates, to family, to friends about daily routines that they experience. And I think this is great. Or how about a morning routine discussion? In small groups, again, your students can discuss their own morning routines. All of us have got morning routines. I'm up at 6 o'clock and I'm at the office by 8 o'clock in the morning. And they could compare them with those of their classmates, which can be very, very different, for example. They can then ask follow-up questions such as, do you usually have breakfast? You don't have breakfast? Or what do you have for breakfast? What time do you leave for school, for example? And here again, the real world link, this fosters practical communication skills that people use every day when discussing schedules or planning meetings, etc. But the last one here that I've put is video role play. So you create an activity where you can have your students watch a video, in this case, this particular video, and then reenact the roles. They can try to use the same vocabulary and they can ask similar questions. And you want to encourage them to change, to vary the content based on their own routines. Because the real world link here is that this allows students to practice adapting information to their own lives, which is a skill that we use every day in everyday communication. So these activities that I've just shared with you now, they focus on encouraging practical communication in everyday context, and they reinforce vocabulary and sentence structure related to routines that we experience every single day. Look at another example. One more example. This page over here is quite cool. It offers a variety of activities to promote, again, real world, communicating in the real world. But this is also pretty relevant and pretty fun. Here are some ideas, okay, based on this content that you see in this image here. You could create a classroom debate. I love debates. Children love debates. There are so many pros rather than cons to creating a classroom debate. So in this case, it could be, which school would you choose? Have a debate where your students argue whether they would prefer to attend a school like Hogwarts, for example, which is from the Harry Potter books, or another school, in America, or I don't know, in the UK. And they could use details from reading, that little excerpt that you see here, McKinley High School, as well as Jordan College. They could use, that information, these details from the reading, and add their own preferences to support their choice. So here, the real world link is simulating real world debates or discussions people have when choosing schools, universities, or even educational programs. Now, what you can do is you can also, on top of that, create an activity that requires them to write a day in the life of a fictional student. So your students can write a short story or even a journal entry, a diary entry about a typical day in the life of a student attending one of these fictional schools, let's just say. And they could incorporate elements from the text that they see in front of them. And this particular exercise, the real world link, it simulates creative writing, which, by the way, is really, really important as well, and journaling even. Common forms of communication in education, personal reflection, or even storytelling. So for me, these kind of activities will help students practice both speaking and writing in a way that mimics real world tasks like interviews, promotions, comparisons, debates, all of this while fostering creativity and communication. So where do we get these particular activities from? I get it from this particular book. It's called English Goals. And this is a book that has been created by the company I work for, which is Ellie Publishing. And it is such a popular course. There are 4 levels altogether. It's more than a language course, to be honest. It's a tool. And this tool helps you teachers, as well as your students, to connect with English. Because what it does is it creates a lot of activities to bring real world communication into your classroom. So you are encouraging your students to use their English skills, whatever you teach them, in everyday situations, whether it's having conversations or whether it's solving problems in a team, soft skills, mediation skills, and essential soft skills like collaboration and critical thinking. So there's a lot of prints, there's a lot of digital materials. And for me, this particular course has helped me greatly with my students to use the language, the English language, naturally and confidently in their daily life. But what's helped me the most is this, the teacher's book. Because all of us need tools, all of us need help. You've got the internet, you've got artificial intelligence, which can provide you a lot of information. Why not just have it in one book? I love teachers' books because a teacher's book can be comprehensive and can support my lesson in the most effective way, even lesson planning and through management. Give me a lot of ideas because this particular book here is designed to make teaching easier. It offers you clear guidance on how to implement each activity. And there are tips for how to adapt tasks to meet the needs of different learners, for example. So we have it, educators, ladies and gentlemen. We have learned today a lot about real world communication. And before I finish my presentation, we can watch this little video very, very quickly. I'm just going to press play. Here we go. It's just a 1-minute video.
Written with today's teenagers in mind, English Goals prepare students to use English in the real world, taking them from pre-A1 to B1 level. English Goals is a 4-volume series with 8 units per level. The coursebook develops grammar, vocabulary and the 4 skills in a balanced way, so that students can instantly use language in real-life communication. English Goals develops life skills with activities that encourage creativity, collaboration and communication. More than 70 videos present vocabulary and functional language in a natural context. Insights into mediation activities help the class face the many communication challenges of the 21st century. It helps students build their confidence to talk about and work with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The coursebook meets the needs of every student with highly inclusive material, ideal for mixed ability classrooms with the Simple Goals section. It introduces STEM education with activities which develop critical thinking, problem solving and analytical skills. English Goals comes with a student book, a workbook, an innovative digital book and an easy-to-access app for students. Don't forget the teacher's book with keys, scripts, tests and additional notes on culture flipped classroom pathways and inclusivity. Find out more about English Goals on the website. Unlock your potential with English Goals.
Let's just go to the last slide. Oh, allow me to see. Okay. Here we go. Now, as a summary, I'd just like to give you again the breakdown of the important components of today's presentation. The key takeaways: real world communication does prepare students for exams and life beyond the classroom. Really, really important. While exams, they do assess language proficiency, real world tasks that you create for your students will develop functional fluency. And this will help your students excel in an academic setting, as well as in their careers, in their professional lives, of course. Now, these real life scenarios, they do provide students with the tools they need to succeed in both structured exams and unpredictable real world solutions. And of course, the pages that I've shared with you, the video that I shared with you, that's another tool that I love. And I think it's a great way to, it's really designed to support these practices that you can implement and integrate in your lessons. That's it for my presentation, ladies and gentlemen, educators, passionate and enthusiastic as you are. I hope that you've gained a lot of information from this presentation. If you have any comments at all, please put them in the chat box. I'm more than happy to answer questions that you may have, and I'm more than happy to share my experiences with you anytime, any day. I'm on LinkedIn. You can follow me as well. And if you've got questions, please put them on the chat box so I can help you. I'm just going to stop sharing this one for a minute. Yeah. Oh, I see a lot of I see a lot of comments here. So for those of you who've got questions, you can put it in the chat box or even in the Q&A session, please. Yes, I will definitely be sending you. I've got a question here from Mauni Mall. I definitely will be sending my slides over to you, so you can have them as a reference for the future. And if you've got any further questions, you are more than welcome to ask me. Yes. Well,
Mr. Shou, waiting for questions in the chat box or in the Q&A session. I think you can randomly pick 1 or 2 questions that we have previously sent out to you, that can help answer some of the participants' concerns and questions.
I most certainly can do that, but I'll answer Tristan's question here. He's asked if real world communication only benefits the students. Well, I think that to answer your question, Tristan, as our students, I'm a student myself. I'm an adult student, but I'm a student myself. And I do sincerely believe that real world communication helps anyone and everyone in building language skills, which are essential. It could be a different language from English. I lived in Bangkok for 4 years, and I also lived in Hong Kong for 4 years, and I learned Cantonese and I learned survival Thai, for example. The only way to do that was to be out there communicating with the people. So you've got your books to refer to, but if you're not out there communicating with people, you're not going to learn the lesson. If you, as a teacher in your classroom, you organize your lessons to include this real world communication, that's going to ensure that your students pick up the language faster, faster and faster. That's all I can say. So I'm also going to open up some of the questions that I've been sent here. Right. Now, techniques for enhancing students in real world communication. When I share these slides with you, you will see again that I've broken down many different strategies that you can use or you can implement and integrate in your classrooms. Role-playing scenarios, for example, debates, you can ask your students to create campaigns, cultural awareness, social awareness. There are so many things you can think about. There are so many trends in educational standards now. And we have to keep up with the times, of course. Things are very different now in education than they were 10 years ago. So I would suggest look up all of the educational trends, sustainability, the Agenda 2030, mediation tasks, and you can create projects for your children this way. So to ensure that they learn communication skills and they're able to adapt it to the outside world. I hope that answers one of your questions. Another question I have here is, what if the students are teenagers and they are shy to speak in English? I have had this problem many times. So I tend to group my kids. I'll group my kids and I'll speak to the ones that are pretty dominant. And the ones who are dominant because their level of English is really good, I will ask them to be like a mini teacher. So this creates collaboration and creativity in your classroom as well. So you could create pairing activities where you have students of different diverse learning needs put them together, and they can be mentors, for example. Again, these are things that have worked in my class, and I'm quite sure they would work in your class as well. Right. Do we have any more questions? Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? If not, I guess, Han, we can wrap up today's session. Thank you so much for being part of this amazing session. I truly enjoyed speaking to all of you, and I hope that you participate in any future webinars that is organized by ProEd Education Solutions. It's been an amazing experience for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sushil, for your inspiring and practical presentation. And thank you for all of the participants for joining us today. We hope that you gain valuable insights and ideas to empower the students and make language learning both natural and fun. Thank you again for your participation.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye. Thank you, Han.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Before we leave, can you just stay for a little one more minute? Looking ahead, mark your calendars for our next exciting webinar on February the 7th, 2025 at 8:30 p.m. Vietnam time. We'll be joined by Mr. Mike Mayer, Senior Director of GSE from Pearson, UK, to discuss strategies for building confidence in learners. Stay tuned for details on registration through our EduVerse platform and monthly newsletter.